right, friends, welcome back. Happy Monday. Today we have episode 7 titled Bad Blood When Medicine Drained the Patient. We're talking all about bloodletting and leeches.
Yeah, they kind of go together.
And fun fact, they are both still used in modern medicine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But probably not the same way that they were used before.
Definitely not the same way they were used before, but I'm really excited for this episode and the ethics autopsy and about like how important it is to question medicine.
Yeah.
It's not just, this is what we've always done, so we're going to keep doing it.
I'm going to talk about some crazy shit.
Yeah. All right. Welcome, Cadaver Crew.
Get your dark little minds right and settle in.
Class is in session and the cadaver is already on the table.
I'm B.
And I'm Sam.
And this is the Cadaver's Lessons.
So today we're talking about the circulatory system.
Yeah. Not gonna lie, this is wild. Because I got into some ancient medicine.
Yeah.
The connections that people made, they seem so crazy.
Yeah.
To us now because
we know now.
But when you're in it, you're like, I could maybe believe in that.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
It's just going to be wild because the way they connect blood to emotion, to personality, to literally everything.
Yeah.
Is crazy. So
yeah. Why it still matters today, like we said, it's still being used. Yeah. We still need to use bloodletting and we have to do what we now call a therapeutic phlebotomy safely. So that's why this historical practice and what changed with it is so important. And then the medical leeches, there's actually a ton that we've learned about them. And there's still so much to learn about their saliva. And so, yeah, we have this huge past about it and we've learned a lot through the past, but we also still have a lot to learn with modern medicine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Vitals check.
Vital check. Good for the week. I'll take that one. Our pup is home. Started chemo today.
He's doing bad boy things.
He's doing bad boy things, which means he's back to his bad boy self.
Yeah. He's just like, I know I got the big C, but I'm going to bark my head off and eat off the counter anyway.
Yeah. And I'm the cancer pup, so I can do whatever I want.
Right. I'm like, calm down.
Yeah.
You just got out of the hospital. Can we have a second?
Yeah, just a second.
But it's good to have him back.
Yeah. We had a pretty chaotic last week in the emergency room. 2 big cases that stood out to me this week was one of my patients overdosed in the bathroom. I had a badass nurse who found him really quickly. And even though everything didn't go right, which I won't get into, we did get the patient back and he woke right up. There's nothing like kneeling on a bathroom floor, bagging a patient as you feel with a pulse with one of your fingers to make sure they're still alive. Nothing like it.
Good thing we learned about bagging in polio.
Yeah. I just reviewed that topic, actually.
You're like, oh, I got this.
Yeah. And then I had a really cool transient global amnesia case. That's all that they've been able to define it as so far. Like, we're not coming up with anything else when I look back at the inpatient notes. But essentially, this patient walked 100 miles with no recollection, no understanding as to why he walked. Yeah, it was a very, very interesting case. Nothing has came back on, his CTA of his head and neck, his brain MRI. We did prolonged EEG to see, is this seizures that's causing this? Like, what's going on? It's been a really interesting case to follow.
Dang.
Yeah.
Could you imagine? I'd be like, can I get some laying on my couch?
Yeah.
Amnesia.
Yes, would love.
I don't want to walk 100 miles.
Yeah. Parenting chaos?
Guys. Let me tell you. If your kid gets the stomach bug, you getting it.
You're getting the stomach bug.
It's just a matter of time.
Yes. The only hope for you is that maybe for your house, you will get it a different time than your partner and not the exact same time as your kid is also still sick. That was a rough 24 hours.
I have never thrown up like that in my life.
No, never. I've never. Yeah. We also realized B and I have never been sick at all.
At the same time.
At all. Even with like a cold. We've never gotten a cold at the same time.
And we've been together for a minute.
Yeah. And I never want to experience that again. I would like for someone to bring me my cup of water and my wet wash rag when I call for it from now on. I don't want to get it myself.
You were like, can you bring me this? And I'm like, yeah. While I'm throwing up in the other room, like, it'll just be a minute.
Yeah, it was bad. Okay. But we made it.
We survived. Feeling better. And the kiddo is feeling better, but now she's teething. So,
yeah.
What's new?
And then podcast wins. We've officially crossed the 300 streams. which is really, really exciting.
Yeah, that's all up to you guys, so thank you.
Yeah. And then we had our first listener from Nicaragua. Yeah, that's crazy. We're at like
worldwide
7, 8 countries at this point. And it's typically like 1 or 2 listeners from each country, but that's just how things happen. And it's been really exciting to watch the new countries pop up.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Let's get started. Anatomy crash course. So, important things to know. The average human adult has about 5 liters of blood plus or minus. So we got some stuff to give. When people say, they've been bleeding a lot, I'm like, yeah, relative. Bloodletting is defined as the removal of blood for therapeutic purposes. It's still used today, but now we call it therapeutic phlebotomy. So that's how our medical terminology has changed a little bit. Phlebotomy is the medical practice of drawing blood from a patient. It's typically done by accessing a vein, and venesection is the historical term for phlebotomy. So just another medical term that's changed over the year.
That's the one I'm going to use.
Yep. And then I just want to do a quick and easy on veins versus arteries so we can have an understanding of them. Arteries carry oxygenated blood away, artery, away from the heart, and veins return deoxygenated blood back to the heart. The only exception in this is the pulmonary circuit and umbilical vesicles. And I think the pulmonary circuit's really interesting. The pulmonary artery still carries blood away from the heart, but it's deoxygenated blood and it takes it to the lungs for gas exchange. And then the pulmonary vein takes the oxygenated blood back to the heart to be pumped out into systemic circulation. Okay. Yeah. That's it. That's our quick crash course. We'll get into more when it's my turn.
Yeah.
Lay in the land.
That's all you need to know for me.
Yeah. Okay. Let's do it.
But what we are going to talk about is we're going to talk about some other things that relate to blood, but are also mystical.
Mystical.
Yeah.
Interesting choice of words.
Mystical. Magical.
Mystical. Magical.
So the practice of bloodletting has been recorded for about 3,000 years.
Okay.
So it's been around. It's an old one.
It is an old one.
An oldie but a goodie.
Yeah. It is a goodie.
Will, sometimes. Depends.
Today it's a goodie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it started with the Egyptians, actually. And I feel like that's where a lot of our medicine kind of stems from because they're very high. They were a high documented civilization. So they had a written language. So we were able to see what they did in that time. So Egyptian medicine was based on the idea that the body has channels called metu. So they have channels that carried blood, air, urine, feces, and spiritual forces.
They're not wrong.
Right?
Yeah.
So you have these channels in your body, and when disease happened, that's when these channels were blocked or corrupted.
Okay.
So bloodletting...
All channels? Not just like the spiritual ones? All the channels became blocked and corrupted?
It depends.
Okay.
It depends on the disease. The disease dictates which channels are blocked, which then dictates your treatment.
Okay.
So bloodletting was one of the ways to clear a channel. So the methods were venesection, like you talked about, leeches, and scarification. We're going to talk more about scarification later on, and the practice of venesection. Unlike Greek medicine, which we were about to get into, Egyptian bloodletting was not just medical, it was also spiritual. So it had that spiritual component to it, whereas later on in the Greek writings, it's much more you're doing it because that's the treatment we've decided that is best for this disease. This is like we're on a spiritual journey with your treatment. So it's connected. Blood was both a life force and a carrier of divine as well as a demonic influence. Blood could carry divine, like intervention or divine influence, if you will, but it also could turn demonic, depending. So bloodletting could be a way to remove some demonic influence as well.
Okay.
And then because of this, bloodletting was often paired with incantations, amulets, and appeals to gods like Sekhmet, which was a god associated with plagues. So if you're appealing to the plague god, then you're hoping for the removal of the plague.
Yeah.
So bloodletting paired with prayer and calls to God, different gods, depending on what you wanted. And the prayer portion actually continues on as well. We'll see it come back up. This continued with the Greeks, Romans, Arabs, and Asians. And this is where we jump back into Hippocrates. Remember we talked about him?
He always
First
comes
episode?
back. Yeah, he always comes back.
Right?
Old friend.
Yeah, so let's do a little refresh and dive a little deeper on what he believed. Because we talked about trepanation in his case last time he came up. But we're going to talk a little bit more about how organs are connected and how blood is connected to all of that. He believed that existence was represented by the 4 basic elements, earth, air, fire, and water. And then humans had 4 basic humors.
Okay.
So humors are blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile.
Black bile bad?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have a whole table.
We love a good table.
Okay. Blood was associated with the temperament of sanguine and the element air, the season spring, and the organ liver. So the liver.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the personality traits that went along with this humor were cheerful and social. And then if you had excess of this, you would lead to restlessness and indulgence. So these are all connected. You need like a map.
Yeah.
And I'm going to get into it, but they actually did have one.
Is it like when everyone sleeps together at work and you just trace it all back to each other?
So a web.
A web.
Kind of. Yeah. So blood associated with the liver, which is associated with cheerfulness. If you have too much, it'll lead to restlessness. So if you're restless or you're suffering from indulgence,
yeah,
then less blood will help with that. Right?
Yeah.
That's the idea here. Then you have phlegm, which is associated with phlegmatic, which is cold and moist.
Yeah, I mean, people have phlegm in their cough when they have a cold.
The element association is water. The season is winter. The organ association is brain and lungs.
Yeah.
And the personality traits are calm and steady. So kind of think of like your brain and lungs are that calm and steady thing that keeps you together.
See, I can get behind this.
Yeah. And so an excess of phlegm would lead to sluggishness and apathy. So you don't feel good. You feel a little sluggish.
Yeah.
Then you got too much phlegm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yellow bile is associated with caloric, which is hot and dry and associated with the element fire, and the season summer, and the organ gallbladder.
I mean, they're on to things. This is so interesting.
Yeah, right? And so the personality traits associated with this humor and temperament are ambitious and assertive. So if you have excess, it leads to anger, fever, and aggression.
Okay.
It's kind of interesting.
It is very interesting.
Right? And then black bile is melancholic. This is me. I got the black bile.
I was just telling someone about your dysthymia the other day.
I got that. It's associated with cold and dry, the earth, the season of autumn, aka like fall.
Things are dying.
Things are dying. Yes, it aligns perfectly. The spleen.
Okay.
I'm not sure where that came in.
Yeah.
So the personality traits associated with this are thoughtfulness and seriousness. So very like logical, thoughtful about what people need, that like deep thought kind of person that really gets stuck in their thoughts maybe. And so excess leads to depression and anxiety.
Yeah, that's you. I'll take the anxiety part. I got that.
I got the black bile.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you were ill, that meant you had an imbalance within the 4 humors. So treatment meant balancing you back out by removing excess humor.
AKA blood.
Blood, or, maybe you got to throw up a ton.
Ooh.
Or maybe you need it
Too soon.
Yeah, I know, right? So there were other ways to also balance out the other humors, but obviously we're going to talk about blood.
Blood.
Yeah. So bloodletting was already really popular in the 1st century, but this is when this guy, Galen of Pergama, comes along and declared blood as the most dominant humor. He's like, you listen. I know that this is the most dominant humor, and this is where it's all at. And so the practice of venesection, aka phlebotomy, just blows up.
Yeah.
And he also claimed that the liver constantly produces new blood, and that excess blood was the most common cause of illness. So bloodletting literally becomes the default treatment.
Isn't this terrifying that somebody comes by and they have the audacity? That's the only word for this. They have the audacity, and because they have it, everyone's like, get in line, boys, we're listening.
He got that straight white man confidence.
That straight white man audacity. Somebody told me I had that once. If you're listening, you know exactly who you are. And I was like, yeah, you're probably right. But I'm not straight and I'm not a man. So let's go.
And that's why you get no lobotomy.
Yes.
So Galen was so impactful in spreading the practice of bloodletting because he was really good with words, and he was a good writer, and he was a powerful teacher. So he could really he was one of those people that would probably start a cult.
Yeah.
I
mean, did he start a cult?
I mean, kind of a medicine cult.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Terrifying.
So his ideas and writings were disseminated by physicians in the Middle Ages when we really see bloodletting become the standard treatment. So he standardized which vein to open depending on what the disease was, how much blood to remove, and which diseases required repeated bleeding.
Yeah.
Which is a thing that we see where it's not just one time.
No.
Come for a lot of times.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so this system essentially became medical law for over 1,300 years.
That's a long time.
And as we move into the medieval times, they're still using Galen's methodologies.
Yeah.
The Greek medical texts were preserved by Islamic scholars and then reintroduced to Europe through monasteries in the 11th and 12th centuries. So medieval medicine was built on Galenic humorism, Christian theology, and astrology. So those three things.
Yeah.
That's a lot of things to keep track of.
It is.
Physicians believed that God created a balanced body, that illnesses were imbalances, and that bloodletting restored God's order.
Interesting. Like someone has pneumonia and they're like, let's take your blood.
Yes. We actually get into that later. It's funny you brought it up. Did you read my notes?
I did not.
You sneaking.
I did not.
Anyways. So how did they go about doing this? Few methods that was split into generalized versus localized methods. Venesection was the most common and usually involved the median cubital vein, which is in the elbow, the part that you always think about drawing blood from.
Yeah.
Even though that was the main one, you could use multiple others. It didn't really matter. It did matter. It depended on the disease, which one you used. That was just the most common one.
Mm-hmm.
And the main instruments to perform the venesection were lancets and fleams. These were often tools that physicians or people performing bloodletting would like keep on hand. Like they have them in their pocket.
Ready.
Yeah, ready at all times. So lancets were small, sharp-pointed, two-edged instruments. And then fleams had multiple variable size blades that folded into a case like a pocket knife.
Were we reusing fleams?
I mean, you can wipe them off.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Coming off the HIV and AIDS, probably not a good idea.
I mean, yeah. So they actually had venesection charts that showed the exact veins, lunar phases, and seasons to align correctly for treatment. And then certain veins were tied to certain organs. So, for example, if you had a headache, that meant you had to bleed the cephalic vein. Headache, cephalic vein. Fever meant bleed repeatedly, over and over again.
Wow. How many people died from this?
I didn't give that number, but maybe we'll talk about it in the case file.
Okay.
Melancholia, aka depression. Bleed and purge.
Purge what? Vomit?
Yeah.
Oh, boy, they got nothing left.
I know. That would make me more depressed. It did.
This past weekend, it did.
It did make me more depressed. So they had these charts that basically, think of like what I think about are like little dial charts.
Yeah.
Like pie chart things. And you like move your chart this way. Oh, it's this month. It's this season. It's this lunar phase. And we're talking about the head. And it tells me what vein to use and how much.
Yeah.
Right? So it's kind of like medical procedures.
It's very
intricate.
Yeah, it's very intricate.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. So the localized versions of bloodletting were scarification with cupping and leeches.
But they weren't medical leeches grown in a lab like they are now.
No. Scarification was performed by scraping the skin with a cubed-shaped brass box containing multiple small knives.
Yeah. Disgusting. We're back. We're back to the scraping. I thought we left that in trepanation.
So they would do the brass box containing small knives and scrape it against the skin, right? And then they would do cupping on top of that, which was placing a dome-shaped glass over the skin and extracting air by suction or prior heating. So they heat the glass up and then put it over where they did the scarification, and then it would kind of like extract the blood out of the small little cuts.
Yeah, I mean, the heat would bring the blood to the surface. It would vasodilate. Like, all of that makes total sense.
Right. So, and then this is where we also get our leeches. So a leech can ingest about 5 to 10 milliliters of blood, almost 10 times its own weight.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, leeches were really easy to use. You didn't need to find a vein or need to know how to read medical charts to use them. Plus,
pop it on.
Yeah. Plus, they were cheap and reusable. Reuse, recycle.
Reduce, reuse, recycle.
Right? We're like, if you only have one, you can still do lots of treatments.
They just get really full, though.
Yeah.
They got to have time to
digest.
Yeah.
Rest, digest.
Rest and digest, that sympathetic nervous system.
We got lots of catchphrases today. So who actually practiced these methods? I thought this was really interesting. So in early medieval Europe, monasteries were the centers of learning, and they preserved the medical text of Hippocrates, Galen, and Arabic medical text. So as you can imagine, churches, monasteries, these are the places where literature lives. They own those libraries. They don't exist anywhere else.
Yeah.
Really. They're preserving the text. And they're also one of the very few people that can read. They're actually literate. Most of the population is not.
Kind of scary, but yeah.
Yeah. So treatment kind of fell on them because they were able to read the text. So they're the only ones that can really execute the text because they're the only ones that can read.
Yeah.
And that's why old-timey medieval signs never have text on them. So if you went to the saloon or the bar or the whatever it was called in the medieval times that I can't think of right now.
Yeah. The place to drink.
The place to drink, the watering hole, if you will, then it would just have like a picture of a glass of beer in it.
Yeah.
You know?
Because nobody could read.
Nobody could read.
Man.
And plus, it was considered Christian charity to help people who are ill. So it kind of
Listen to that again, friends.
Yes.
Yes.
So monks and clergy diagnosed illnesses. They prescribed diets or prayers, depending on what they were trying to treat, and performed bloodletting and minor procedures. So
that's so cool.
You wanted to get a procedure done, you were probably going to the local monastery.
Yeah. And you think about even like when midwives were the ones delivering babies, like a lot of times it was sisters of the church.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't wait to talk about that too.
I know.
So medicine was considered spiritual care. They were connected, which aligns with kind of how the Egyptians thought of it. And so here it would just happen to be the case because they could read.
Yeah.
Really. But over time, bloodletting became much more frequent, aggressive, and sometimes violent. So it really didn't line up with the Christian doctrine. And the clergy were not down for this.
Good.
So they thought of themselves as pure and they were not intended to shed blood. And so they grew uncomfortable with the practice because it was becoming that huge popular spike and people were getting weird about it. So in 1163,
way back when,
back in the day, there was the Council of Tours, which banned the clergy from performing surgical acts, which included bloodletting, incisions, and amputations. So they were no longer allowed to perform those duties. They could still diagnose, prescribe, and pray, but not actually cut.
To me, it makes total sense. Like things always get taken too far, and at some point someone has to take a stand and say, like, we're not comfortable with this anymore.
Yeah. Sometimes they could get away, though, with using a little leechy leech.
Fair.
It's like a workaround for treatment because it wasn't really shedding blood.
Yeah.
You just pop a little bad boy on there.
Yeah.
So this introduced a kind of a gap in care. Who was going to do the bloodletting?
Yeah. If not them, then who?
Right. So,
oh boy,
the fix was barber surgeons.
Barber, like cut hair?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, seat ourselves. Let's go.
So, this is why barber poles are red and white, blood and bandages. That's what it stands for. Some add, especially in the United States, some added blue. That's for veins.
Smart.
And then the pole itself represented patients gripping in order to make their veins pop out. That's what the pole stands for.
Who one day said, you know who should be in charge of this? Barbers.
Well, there's a reason for it, okay? It's not that crazy. Calm down. So their barber pole, which became famous because I told you nobody can read, so they have barber signs and poles, right? And that became like advertising for their services.
Yeah.
They already worked in a public setting. They knew how to use blades. It was a perfect match.
Perfect. Yeah, they knew how to use blades, but not how to insert them into people's veins and not let them bleed out.
They figured it out.
You know, practice makes perfect.
Right. They took over bloodletting, tooth pulling, lancing boils.
Tooth pulling? What?
Get a shave, get a cut, get your tooth pulled.
Get out of here.
I'm serious.
Okay. Tooth pulling.
Tooth pulling, lancing boils, setting bones, and even minor amputations.
The audacity of these people. They are not trained for this.
They learned anatomy quickly.
Jesus.
So physicians at the time, these good old boys, they were down for this.
Why?
Because they were happy to diagnose and theorize as long as they avoided the manual labor, which was seen as beneath them. So they didn't want to do the nitty-gritty work.
So we'll let the barber down the street that's never been trained in medical practices do it.
Yeah. It became part of like the barber trade, you know, like how a blacksmith, you got an apprentice. It's like,
that doesn't make it okay. You are making it seem like you are okay with this. Tell me which side of the line are you on?
I'm not okay with it.
Okay.
I'm not okay with physicians just being like, I'm only here to theorize.
I mean, sure.
Right? So essentially, physicians got to preserve their intellectual authority, give a diagnosis and theory of treatment, then the barber surgeons would execute it. And if it didn't go right, the barbers were to blame.
Of course they were.
Because it's not the theory, it's the practice.
Yes.
So physicians didn't practice because theories were never wrong.
We just left someone else to blame.
And this is why it took so long for people to realize that bloodletting was not good.
Yeah.
Because physicians weren't doing it. They were just prescribing it. And so they didn't even see the results or
watch people die
or watch the anatomy of it happen or anything like that. It was just, go do it. Go see your local barber. He'll
take this prescription pad with you.
Yeah. He'll do 3 bloodletting sessions at this many ounces each, and then you'll be good to go. But because there was that gap where they didn't perform the procedures themselves and didn't see the outcomes, that's why it took so long for bloodletting to fall out of favor.
Yeah.
So what happened with the leeches here? So there was this thing called a leech craze, and they took over. Everybody had them. Everybody wanted them. Give me the leeches.
Good for them. I mean, they weren't medical grade, but leeches do some cool stuff.
So Francois Broussais, a Persian physician, made the use of leeches very popular and was a fan of aggressive bloodletting.
But let's define aggressive with leeches. They're taking 5 to 10 mLs. So, like, they're not taking that much.
Okay, I'll tell you.
Oh, boy.
He believed that all fevers were due to specific organ inflammation, and in placing leeches over the organ of the body that was deemed to be inflamed, you could reduce the fever. So his practices were very, very popular, especially in France, where about 35 million leeches were used a year and 5 to 6 million in Paris alone.
I just want to know, like, are you digging these leeches up outside?
Yeah, I should have gotten more into where they came from.
Yeah.
Maybe. So some patients routinely received 20 to 80 leeches at a time and repeated sessions.
That's a lot of creepy crawlers to have on your skin.
That's like some Fear Factor shit.
Yeah, it is.
I'm not here for that.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, could you imagine having 80 leeches on you at one time?
No.
Ugh.
No. Never make that sound again.
Okay, so who are some famous people that use bloodletting that maybe you know?
Maybe.
Charles II in 1685.
King Charles II.
King, respect the crown.
Yeah, come on.
We don't do kings here.
Okay. What about our European listeners?
Okay. King Charles II, 1685. When he suffered a seizure, he was treated immediately with 16 ounces of bloodletting given from his left arm, followed by another 8 ounces from cupping. Then they gave him regimens of emetics, enemas, purgatives, and mustard plasters.
Tell me about these mustard plasters.
That's going to have to be a different episode.
Okay.
Write it down. Then more bleeding from the jugular veins.
Jugular? That's aggressive.
Jugular.
That is dangerous.
He then had more seizures.
Of course he did.
Received more treatment, and in total he had 24 ounces of blood taken before he died.
Bye-bye. Good night.
Could you imagine you're having a seizure and they're like, hurry, I know what to do.
Straight to the neck.
Bleed him out.
Yeah. Awful. Awful practices.
Also our homie George Washington.
President George Washington.
Our homie President George Washington. 1799. After riding in snowy weather, Washington developed a fever and respiratory distress. Under the care of his 3 physicians, he had copious amounts of blood drawn, blistering, emetics, and laxatives, and then he died that night.
Due to
epiglottis inj.
Shut up and let me say the word because I know you're not going to pronounce it right. Epiglottitis.
Due to glottitis and shock.
So epiglottitis is what he was originally sick with. And then shock probably because it was hypovolemic shock because they took all of his blood. I mean, maybe septic shock, but they weren't helping him.
No.
Wow, I never knew that's how he died. Did you know that?
I didn't know that. In 1799. He was just out. He had a ride. Oh, I should have looked up what the ride was for. Like, what he was delivering something or whatever. But yeah, he was out in the cold.
Well, that is wild. I feel like that's something that should be like a fun fact that everyone knows.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was also very controversial because people were like, why did he use bloodletting? That's not. And
it was the fad, as all of these things were.
I'm pretty sure he asked for it. He was like, I need this.
I mean, he probably would have died from the epiglottitis anyways, if we're being honest.
What's epiglottitis?
It's caused by a virus that we have a vaccine to now, so it's not as well known. But it's like something in your throat gets enlarged. So they start just like spitting up their secretions, and it's very, very serious. But it's so serious we have a vaccine for it now.
Okay, so when was the turning point? When did we see the cracks start to come about this bloodletting thing?
It's time.
By the 16th and 17th century, anatomy had improved,
Yes.
We're getting there. In 1628, William Harvey proves that blood circulates. It's not endlessly produced.
Yeah. It is produced, but not endlessly.
Before, they thought that it came from the liver, and the liver was endlessly producing blood.
Yeah.
And so that's why you could have too much.
Yeah.
That's not the case.
That's not the case, no.
So there's two sides of the aisle here. Throughout the 17th and 18th centuries, we kind of have people, physicians, who are really on one side or really on the other. And they're kind of like battling it out.
Yeah.
So in the late 1700s, we have Dr. Benjamin Rush, one of the most controversial physicians of his time, held the simplistic view of all febrile illnesses were due to an irregular convulsion action of the blood vessels.
Yikes.
Meaning that all cures needed to be focused on dampening down vascular overexcitement.
Yikes. False. But I mean, was he figuring this out because when people have fevers, their heart rate goes up because their body's fighting off an infection? So logically, I can understand that he's seeing those two coincide with each other.
So he was really active in yellow fever when
Mhm.
that hit in the United States in Philly. He was located in Philly. And so that was like his thing, was yellow fever and helping people through that and curing that. And so probably associated with that.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, he's wrong, but I can understand.
So he was a big fan of depletion therapy, which means aggressively bloodletting, vigorous purging.
The purging, man, it's just too soon for me. Just thinking about forcing these people to vomit.
Give me the leech.
Yeah, give me the leech for sure.
He was known to extract large amounts of blood and bleed patients several times. He was also a big fan of his calomel purgatives, which were loaded with mercury, and he called the Samson of medicine.
I would love to know how many people got mercury poisoning and died. Yeah, bad.
Yeah. His practices had garnered reactions from both sides, some saying murderous and others saying genius.
Murderous for me.
I choose that one.
I choose that one.
So then, on the other side of the pond, Edinburgh School of Medicine, Dr. William Allison and Dr. Hughes Bennett in the mid-1800s were at the same school, both teaching, and they had very fraught different views as well. And so they were kind of fighting it out at this time. So Dr. Allison was an old school guy who believed in bloodletting, and that experience and observation were the tried and true. So if you had experience, and the only experience we have is bloodletting, that's what we're going with.
Well, it's the classic, it's what we've always done.
Exactly. That's what he's coming off of, right? Whereas Dr. Bennett believed in new methods of pathology and physiology supported by the invention of the microscope and stethoscope.
New stuff.
They especially debated bloodletting in relation to the treatment of pneumonia.
Okay.
Coming back full circle.
Yeah.
And how patient outcomes had improved with the decline in the practice of bloodletting.
Yes.
Dr. Allison simply thought that the illness had gotten weaker.
False.
It couldn't be the practice.
Yeah.
It had to be the illness was actually getting weaker.
I just feel like pneumonia is getting stronger than ever.
Right. While Dr. Bennett believed that the decreased use in bloodletting was the cause for pneumonia patients actually improving.
Wow.
So the tides are turning. And then we get to Dr. Pierre Louis, mid to late 1800s, located in Paris, started to examine the efficacy of bloodletting. So he's actually looking at clinical outcomes. He examined the clinical course and outcomes of 77 patients with acute pneumonia taken from his own and the hospital records. Then he compared patients treated with bloodletting in the early phase versus the late phase of the illness.
Okay.
So they're doing it at different times.
Yeah.
He concluded that bloodletting was actually much less effective than commonly believed, setting the stage for subsequent studies to diminish the use of bloodletting.
We love this guy.
Yeah.
We don't love a lot of guys in medicine, but we like this one.
Yeah, so he's kind of turning the page. But why did it take this long?
Mm-hmm.
The 1800s?
That's what's always been done.
So why did it last so long? One, it sometimes actually did help.
Yeah.
So it lowered blood pressure and reduced inflammation. So it did do those things. And so people were seeing it work sometimes and going with it.
Yeah.
Also, it visibly did something. So I brought this up, I think, in earlier episodes dealing with mental health is sometimes when you can't see something, it feels like you can't do anything. And so bloodletting was visible. You could see that you were draining the person of blood. And so that felt like you were doing good because you could actually see that.
See the treatment.
Right.
Yeah.
And then Galen's authority was unquestionable. So the guy that we talked about that made it so popular, it was his way or the highway.
Yeah.
He was the word.
All it takes is the audacity.
Failure was not a problem of the treatment, but a problem with the patient, or it was just not in God's will, or it was the incorrect timing. You didn't line up the lunar phases correctly.
Yeah, I can't forget about that.
Or you just didn't remove enough.
Yes.
Right. So that's where it came from.
Yeah. Interesting. Really interesting stuff.
I really find the alignment with the humors very interesting, that they're aligning them with personality traits. I think that's very interesting.
I think people still do it today.
Yeah.
Yeah. So big question. Do we still do this? Yes. What survived? A lot of it. What didn't? We stopped bleeding people out. Is that fair?
I think that's a fair compromise.
All right. So a little bit deeper into this anatomy and physiology, I wanted to talk about the parts of blood because we kind of mentioned that in our last episode a little bit. And this is also going to help us for our next episode, which we'll get into. But plasma is mostly water, specifically somewhere around 92% water, but it also contains proteins, nutrients, hormones, ions, and waste products. And then there's red blood cells, what we call erythrocytes, and they carry oxygen from the lungs to the rest of the body and transport carbon dioxide back to the lungs. So that's that deoxygenated blood we were talking about with the anatomy crash course. They carry hemoglobin, so that's how we carry oxygen. And that's why anemia can cause shortness of breath, because hemoglobin equals oxygen. And so if we have low red blood cells, we have less oxygen, we have shortness of breath. So I think sometimes people get a little confused about why they feel so short of breath in those situations, but that's specifically why. White blood cells are your leukocytes. They are, of course, a form of our immune system, and they protect from infections and disease. There's multiple types of leukocytes, which we're not getting into today. And then there's platelets, which play a very vital role in blood clotting, aka coagulation. Quick medical definition so you can kind of understand what we're talking about when we get below. With hemoglobin, we have anemia and polycythemia or erythrocytosis. So anemia is low hemoglobin levels, and polycythemia or erythrocytosis is high hemoglobin levels. Then we have platelets. So you have thrombocytopenia, which is low platelets, increases your risk of bleeding because we don't have the coagulation effect of the platelets. And then high platelets is thrombocythemia, which is an increased risk of inappropriate clots. And these are like your deep vein thrombosis, your pulmonary embolism, things like that. White blood cell count, when it's low, leukopenia, when it's elevated, leukocytosis. And then specifically speaking to our complete blood cell count, which is ordered all the time. I wanted to talk about the specific red blood cell measures of the CBC. So there's the red blood cell count. There is hemoglobin, which can be affected by plasma volume. And so it doesn't always mean that someone has lost a lot of blood. If someone is really fluid overloaded, we'll actually see a hemoglobin lower than their true level versus if someone's dehydrated, we actually see a really elevated hemoglobin. And so I can't iterate this enough that you need to look at the patient in front of you and look at the story in front of you and piece the labs to it. Labs are just one part of everything going on. Then there's the hematocrit level, which is the amount of space that red blood cells take up in the blood. So essentially it's the percentage of red blood cells in relation to the total volume of blood. And decreased hematocrit, this can be due to dilution, like we were talking about that hypervolemia, so fluid overload, a drop in red blood cell production for various reasons, and chronic bleeding due to the reduced lifespans of red blood cells. In increased hematocrit, there is a drop in the plasma components such as fluid loss in burn victims and dehydration. And then there's also high altitude and polycythemia vera, which we're going to talk about today. Then there's your mean corpuscular volume, which is the average size of a red blood cell. It's really great at giving us a clue to the cause of the anemia that's going on. So really important. It helps us classify anemias as microcytic, which is a low MCV, normocytic, normal MCV, or macrocytic, so a high MCV. Examples of high MCV, B12 or folate deficiency, of low MCV, hereditary disorders such as thalassemia, which you have alpha and beta, which is a whole segment in itself, or a deficiency of iron. There's a lot more in the CBC, but that kind of helps set the stage a little bit today.
I think that's enough.
Yeah. I will say that when I'm going through and I am reading a CBC and I'm documenting it, I typically say CBC without leukocytosis, anemia, or thrombocytopenia. And those are the things I'm immediately looking for in the emergency room. So leukocytosis, signs of an infection or inflammation on the body. Anemia, a sign of blood loss. And thrombocytopenia, are they able to clot? If any of those are positive, then I go and look at some other values that are on there. But those are my big three that I look at to kind of set the stage for where is this patient at, if it's helpful to anyone. Medical hints that are really helpful. If you have a patient with a big bleed and they're unstable, blood pressure low, heart rate high, you look at them and you're like, Yikes. With a normal hematocrit, this is an acute hemorrhage. It's brand new. We're not seeing the change in their hematocrit yet. We're not seeing that decreased red blood cells. This should make you nervous. Just because they have a normal hematocrit or, even a normal hemoglobin at this time does not mean this patient is stable. And then if you have low hematocrit with microcytosis, so the low MCV with iron deficiency, this is typically chronic blood loss. So it just kind of helps you with those labs differentiate what's going on with that patient.
Sometimes you can have a big bleed and a stable.
Well, yours was stable. Yeah, maybe we'll do a whole listener
on our personal listener tale.
Yeah, our personal listener tale. But Bernie did have a time where she was acutely hemorrhaging inside of her body, and we didn't know for hours. We knew something was wrong, but we didn't know what. And her initial hemoglobin was stable, and unfortunately, the providers that were taking care of her kind of rode on that versus getting a repeat hemoglobin to see if it was dropping. And
also, my vitals were stable.
Your vitals were stable compared to the average population, but your heart rate was up compared to your normal heart rate. And tachycardia is one of the... Yes, they didn't know that. Yeah. And tachycardia is one of the first vital sign changes we see in blood loss. And so she was actually tachycardic for her, but because her resting heart rate is so low, it looked normal to the rest of the population.
Yeah, maybe we'll talk about it.
Yeah, I think that would be a good story.
I can trauma dump on you.
It was a good trauma dump. It was good. Okay, then we have to talk about iron a little bit so that we can understand hereditary hemochromatosis, which we're going to get into. So there's 4 really main components of iron that we need to know. Ferritin is the measure of stored iron in the body. So we have enough iron to go around. This is what's stored as backup. This is one of the most important things on your iron panel. Thank God I don't order iron panels from the emergency room, so I don't have to interpret this a lot. Ferritin is elevated in hereditary hemochromatosis, which we're going to talk about here in a minute. Serum iron is iron that is circulating in the blood at that specific moment. It changes throughout the day, just like other hormones, so it's not reliable for diagnosing iron deficiency, and most of it's bound to transferrin. And transferrin is what carries iron in the bloodstream. It is increased in states of iron deficiency. So if you think about it, that makes total sense. Your iron's low. Your body wants to be able to transport more iron. And so it increases this thing that is able to transport iron around, which I think makes sense. TIBC is your total iron binding capacity, which is essentially just an indirect measure of transferrin, which we were just talking about. And transferrin and TIBC always trend in the same direction. So most of the time you see labs report it on one or the other. And then there's the transferrin saturation, which shows how much of the carrier, the transferrin, is filled with iron, aka how much is circulating and available for us right now. If it's persistently high, this is an early clue to iron overload, which we're going to get into with hemochromatosis. So, modern equivalents. As I said, we still bloodlet, but our modern term for it, we decided to change it up a little bit.
What, you didn't like bloodletting?
It has quite the bad association to it.
I can't imagine why.
So, therapeutic phlebotomy. This is used to treat blood disorders that raise iron levels or red blood cells in the body. And it doesn't actually treat the conditions that cause this, but it helps manage the symptoms and the complications, which is really important. And many of these things don't have cures. It's amazing as we go through this how many things don't have cures in modern medicine. Many of these things don't have cures, so it really is symptomatic management and preventing any complications. And that's how we're using this nowadays. So why does this work? When we do phlebotomy, aka taking blood from these patients, it stimulates bone marrow stem cells to make red blood cells. Those red blood cells need iron in order to make hemoglobin, in order to make the red blood cell. So iron is transported in the ferritin form from the body's stores to make more hemoglobin. And then overall iron level of the body is reduced because much more of it is in the form of hemoglobin on the red blood cells.
So you're pulling on the process instead of it pushing.
Yes. Yep. I think that's really interesting that we figured that out. When I first read this, I was like, does that make sense? But if you really understand it, it does.
I mean, you're essentially causing a reaction in the body that you want by pulling on a process at one end instead of it pushing on another. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting stuff. Super interesting. So treatment, you can do anywhere from a half a unit, which is 250 mLs, to sometimes up to 2 units. It is not recommended to do more than 2 units of phlebotomy at a time. For every 500 mLs, which is a full unit of blood, there's approximately 200 to 250 milligrams of iron in that. So you can imagine how quickly we can actually help deplete someone's iron stores. In the setting of hemochromatosis, there's weekly transfusions until the ferritin is 50 to 100, which is mildly low, and the hemoglobin is less than 11, which is considered anemic in both males and females. So we're purposely inducing this state of iron deficiency and anemia, which we're going to get more into why.
What's the normal hemoglobin?
Oh God. For males, 12 to 16. For females, it's slightly less than that. I might have those backwards, but the reasons females is slightly less is because of monthly menses.
That makes sense.
Makes sense.
That's why also bloodletting was, I think, historically more useful in men
Mm-hmm.
and not very useful in women.
Yeah. We just tend to have lower
Less.
circulating levels.
We got less to give because you'd be taking it all.
In polycythemia vera, there is weekly to monthly until the iron store is depleted. And then just keep in mind, like, this is a great first line option for these diagnoses that we're about to talk about, because there really is a relatively low risk of adverse reactions at this time. We do all of this in a semi-sterile environment. We're not reusing needles like we used to, any of that. And
you don't have a pocket knife you pull out?
Yeah, bad times. Bad times.
What? So cool, though. Maybe we should try to see if there's one on eBay and we could, like, get a display box for it.
That would be cool. That would be cool. I bet you can find one. But yeah, it's like a great first line option for this. And then also some blood can be donated. Not all blood. And I didn't get into the ins and outs of this. Maybe I will on next week's episode, hint, hint. But if it is allowed to be used, it has to be very clearly marked that it was taken from a patient with like hereditary hemochromatosis or whatever reason that it was used. So 2 birds, 1 stone. All right. Hemochromatosis, it's actually relatively common. It's present in 1 in 300 to 500 people, depending on which study you read.
Interesting. Never heard of it.
Yeah. So primary is hereditary. It's a genetic disorder and it's autosomal recessive, aka you have to have 2 copies of the gene in order to get it. Secondary hemochromatosis can develop as a result of treatments involving frequent blood transfusion. So it's iatrogenic. Essentially, we give it to these patients. This causes excessive iron accumulation in body tissues, which leads to dysfunction of various organs. Too much iron, bad. So this can cause liver disease, diabetes, heart failure, and skin discoloration. And the like pathognomonic term that we learn for boards is this bronzed skin, but they also call it the disease of bronze diabetes because of the bronze skin and the effect of diabetes. As I stated earlier, phlebotomy doesn't clinically improve the disease itself. It prevents complications in patients with symptoms or organ damage secondary to the iron overload. It also helps minimize iron toxicity. It's relatively common. One of the most frequent uses of therapeutic phlebotomy. I feel like we just never hear about hemochromatosis.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. I didn't even know, like, therapeutic phlebotomy was a thing.
Oh, really?
No.
Oh, wow. We're all learning today.
Oh, I learned a lot.
Then there is polycythemia vera, which is a rare type of blood cancer that causes uncontrolled red blood cell production. This obviously causes significant increases in red blood cells. And then typically, maybe not at first, but later on, we'll also see increase in white blood cells and platelets too. So that's our pathognomonic diagnosis on exams for us is someone has an increase in all 3 cell lines, white blood cells, red blood cells, and platelets. And then they go on to tell you more about it. And you're like, I already know what that is. So it's polycythemia vera. There's increased bone marrow production of erythrocytes, which causes really high blood viscosity, as you can imagine. If before, you know, that plasma was 92% water and plasma makes up the second majority. And now we see that there's a lot more red blood cells. Increased viscosity is not a good thing because if blood can't push through the body as it needs to and it becomes stagnant, it's bad. People knew what they were talking about back in the day. Kinda. So this
Don't give them too much credit.
Absolutely not. So this high blood viscosity puts you at an increased chance of DVT, so deep vein thrombosis, which we typically see in lower extremities, pulmonary embolism, which is the blood clot in your lungs. And then there's also an increased chance of strokes, like an embolic stroke or heart attacks. Bad things.
Yeah, I don't want any of those.
Yeah. So due to all these increased chances, once again, we're trying to decrease the complication of polycythemia vera. And so we use therapeutic phlebotomy to decrease these events. Yeah.
Who knew?
Then there's this other thing, which I'd never heard of before doing notes for this. Porphyria cutanea tarda, which we are going to call PCT. And this is due to uroporphyrinogen accumulation, which is caused by a lack of enzymes to break this down.
I just think it's so funny that medical words are just compound words.
Yes.
That just add more words.
Yes.
To it. I'm like, oh, it reminds me of when I was learning German. And you just stick another word, just throw it on there.
Throw it on there. Ready to go. But it makes sense.
Probably if you broke this down,
it means something.
Means something.
Yeah. Did I look at what it means? No.
I don't know.
Because we actually have this on our list of things, a list of topics to do a whole episode on.
I better learn how to pronounce it.
So this is a very rare blood disorder, and it causes blisters to form when skin is exposed to sunlight. What does that sound like? Vampires?
Oh, I was like, what? Oh, this is vampire syndrome.
I'm pretty sure it is. I need to double check, but I'm pretty sure it is.
Okay.
Yeah, cool stuff. And so we also use therapeutic phlebotomy in this case.
I was not picking up what you were putting down.
That's okay.
I worked today.
You can tell.
So, yeah, you can tell.
I'm just kidding. And then others that I didn't get into is sickle cell disease and then non-alcoholic fatty liver disease with hyperferritinemia, aka really high iron levels. Things to consider, though, when we're doing therapeutic phlebotomy, even in today's world, is guidelines and regulation for patient safety. And so that includes how low is their hemoglobin already? What are their iron stores already? Are we going to deplete them too far? Do they weigh enough to be able to tolerate taking, 1 to 2 units off? And so all of that actually gets determined before the doctor can write the order for someone to go in for therapeutic phlebotomy. And a lot of this is driven by the American Association of Blood Banks for guideline and treatments.
Yeah. Nice. Talk about the leeches.
Leeches. All right, medicinal leeches. But before we get started, I have a story.
Tell me.
I had a patient going through medicinal leech therapy.
In the hospital?
In the hospital. So I don't remember the exact story because it was so many years ago, but I'm almost positive it was a finger reattachment, but I wouldn't hang my hat on that. But the funny part of the story is that these leeches got tubed up through our tubing system. So it would be put in like a cup, and then the cup would be put in the tube and go up through our tubing system. And so we would order it, be like, it's time. We need to get the leeches sent back up.
Do pharmacies have these on hand?
I think they have to order them in. I don't think we just keep them in most hospitals.
Okay.
I could be wrong, but I think they were ordered in.
That's hilarious.
Hilarious.
I don't know if you guys have experienced a tubing system before.
Yeah.
Maybe if you've been to a children's museum and you put a ball in and it shoots the ball up. It's the same thing.
Yes.
Essentially, but they go all over. They don't just go up and down. They go side to side.
Precisely.
All over.
It's not like pharmacy is directly below. So when these leeches came up, they would actually be dizzy. We would have to give the leeches enough time because if we immediately tried to place them on the patient, they could not connect. They would just fall off. Yes, literally.
Drunk little leeches.
Yes. And so we would have to give these leeches time to settle back after being zipped through our tubing station.
That is so funny.
I know. It was such a fun time with the leeches. And they come all the time when you're worried about circulation. Like I said, in this case, I think it was the finger. We're doing it all the time. So we're constantly getting leeches and then having to have him sit on his bedside table with them until they calm down a little bit.
When you see the order, do they just call them medicinal leeches?
I have no idea. I didn't look. I was a CNA at that time. Come on.
That, but could you prescribe some now?
Probably.
I'm just saying.
They would never be given outside of a hospital, though.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure we could find some.
Okay. Very different from previous times. Medicinal leeches are bred specifically for medical use at leech farms around the country. And so I didn't get into it, but there's 3 specific types of medicinal leeches, and those are what are bred. But we're not just picking these up out the wild like we used to. It's gotten better.
Yeah.
Yeah. But imagine being I own a leech farm.
Yeah. What do you do for work?
I own a leech farm.
I actually own one of the largest leech farms
in the world.
I supply many hospitals.
Yeah.
That is wild. I wonder what goes into the logistics of feeding leeches.
I agree. Because knowing it's going to be used medicinally, it has to be very strict.
They can only, whoa.
I know. Okay. So nowadays, leeches are used to promote circulation of blood in a specific area. It's best for fingers, specifically for reattaching fingers, because we'll talk about it, but it really struggles with something called venous congestion when we reattach fingers. It's also used after the attachment of skin flaps in plastic or reconstructive surgeries. It's kind of hard because most of the time they're used as last-ditch therapy because you don't hope for this to happen. And most places where I was reading, they don't say oh, we reattach that finger, send them up to the floor and immediately start leech therapy. They're trying other things first, but the data on it's actually really good, even though they're used for last-ditch therapy. Yeah. So the physiology...
I'd be I want the leech therapy.
Yes, me too. If you ever got to reattach my finger, you better give me leech therapy.
Leech therapy.
Hell yeah. That would get a little sad, but we'll get there.
Because they die.
Yeah, we kill them.
Kill the leeches.
Yeah, it's kind of sad.
So it's a one and done? Not like in the old times where you could reuse?
No.
Recycle, reuse?
One and done.
poor guys.
I know. It is
Noble
actually,
cause.
it is actually kind of sad though, right?
Yeah, it's kind of sad. They just help
Like
you
the-
reattach your finger and you just gotta like,
Yeah, you sit them up through this tube station. They get dizzy as hell. They finally attach. They get themselves a good feeding, and then we say, bye-bye. We don't kill them on the floor, though. That's somebody else's job.
thank goodness.
Yeah. Okay. They promote circulation by preventing venous congestion, which is veins in microsurgery are often like reattached, and it's like very meticulous work. But if there's too much blood that's coming through there, the veins, because they've just been reattached and they're not working to their fullest extent, are unable to carry the blood appropriately away from whatever site the surgery was at. So blood pools in these veins and then there's tissue death because the tissues aren't getting oxygen because there's not new blood continuously coming through. So the leeches feeding on this area actually prevent this venous congestion.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're not using it for bloodletting. We're using it for tissue death.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Huh.
I think it's super interesting. These leeches suck the unwanted blood out. They attach to the host body surface by cutting the skin using hundreds of calcified teeth.
First of all, why did you use the word host body?
I don't know. Felt like a good time.
Host body? That makes me think of like
Aliens?
aliens, yeah. Being abducted by aliens and leeches being put on my finger. Like, what?
Yeah. The patient's body. But it wasn't
Host
weird to
body.
you that they cut the skin using hundreds of calcified teeth?
Yeah, I mean, a little slug-looking thing having lots of teeth is disturbing.
Terrifying. Okay, but you might say, like, doesn't that really hurt? Well, it doesn't, because leech saliva is so cool. So cool. It contains a natural local anesthetic, which is why people typically don't feel the leech latch on whatsoever.
That's why, like, you can swim through a river and get lots of leeches on you and then you don't notice.
You don't feel it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. There's also a local vasodilator, which helps improve blood supply. There's natural anticoagulants, which thin the blood and help prevent clots. And then there's also anti-inflammatory components of their saliva. How cool is that?
Yeah, that's interesting, like evolutionary wise, to have leeches have all the, they must have it so that they can keep the ecosystem that they're from going. So they feed on animals, but they're actually giving something to the animals as well. That's super interesting.
When I was doing this research, it brings me back to a lot of people ask why in Western medicine we don't use more homeopathic remedies. I think people forget that we actually do. Like we use honey in wound care and burns. We use leeches, but people don't consider it homeopathic anymore because we've done hundreds and hundreds of studies that prove that it's safe and it's efficacious and all of the things. But like we do use natural and homeopathic remedies. We just don't use them in Western medicine until we know that they're safe. And so I just like want to remind people we do all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. People just forget.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, they just don't know. And that's why we're here.
That's why we're here.
To tell you about the leeches.
So in leech therapy, they feed for about 15 minutes to an hour. Then they fall off when they're full. They just say, all right, I'm done.
Bye.
Leeches are attached periodically over several days. I don't remember how often my guy was getting it, but definitely at least like every 2 to 4 hours.
Dang.
Yeah, it's a lot.
You just send new leeches through the tube?
I think we sent up like 2 at a time. Yeah. I wish I could remember like how big his site was though. Yeah. And then there is a risk of infection because of the gut bacteria of leeches. So patients are on prophylactic antibiotics, and typically these are your fluoroquinolones. So that is one risk that we take when treating these patients. Other uses, I also thought this was really interesting, is that it's been used in migraines. So patients that like aren't responding to any medications, they're trying leech therapy. I'm responsive to medications, so I don't need this.
You want to try though?
No, because they put it in the postauricular, so right behind the ear space. And it truly does reduce the frequency of migraine headaches. And they think it's because of the anesthetic, the anti-inflammatory, and the vasodilator substances of the saliva.
The leech saliva is helping with your migraine.
Yeah. That's so cool.
That's
Come on.
wild.
That's so cool.
Yeah, I didn't put it in my notes, but bloodletting in Egyptian times behind the ear was a really popular.
Yeah, probably for the headaches that you were talking about.
Yeah. So that's interesting. And Egyptians used leeches too. So 3,000 years ago.
So freaking cool. It's also been used in knee osteoarthritis, and it's very interesting. You would think it would just work for a short period of time, but studies are showing pain control for months, like 6 months after the leech therapy. This is because they believe, again, due to the anti-inflammatory effects and the improved circulation to the area.
I'm not doing that.
Okay, but you want me to do it for my migraines?
Yeah.
Anyways, I think we are still continuing to do tons of studies on leeches and their saliva and all the things that we can use them for. How freaking cool is this?
That's pretty wild. I am for it.
I'm for it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, but now sad. They are one-time use. After feeding, they are anesthetized and disposed of as medical waste.
In medical waste bags.
Yeah.
Oh,
And like
man.
the red trash cans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Man, poor guys.
I know. Even though, like, I get it. They're leeches. There's a piece of me that's, like, sad from this.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard not to be a little sad because they did a service.
Yeah, exactly.
You know? It's like when you think a little too hard about your hamburger and you're like...
I don't think too hard about a hamburger most days, but there are some other meals. But if I'm eating a hamburger, I'm going hard. All right.
Until we talk about mad cow disease.
Yeah, then we'll all think about it again. All right, that's the end of medicine today. Obviously, we have a lot more safeguards in place. We are monitoring blood work for the bloodletting or therapeutic phlebotomy. We are accepting the risk of the gut bacteria and leeches and putting patients on prophylactic antibiotics. Patients have to consent to all of this, which before there was some times when patients weren't getting consented, specifically in bloodletting. And modern medicine is still just struggling because we're still just understanding the properties of all of this.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
drum roll.
Ethics autopsy.
I am keeping the leeches.
We're not in cut it or keep it. We're in ethics autopsy.
You're so passionate about ethics autopsy.
I love ethics autopsy.
So yeah, the practice, not evil.
No.
Right? The practice of bloodletting, even historically, I think was kind of in the right direction as far as like balance, spirituality, that kind of thing. I don't think it was done maliciously. I think later on, though, it was probably not so great when it got more aggressive and more violent. And then we were having like untrained people do it. That's not so great. And then people were dying because they were overdoing it. And I didn't get into this either, but bloodletting was also used in the mental health world. And that is unnecessary and not good at all.
Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking the same when I was listening to you. Like, physicians weren't necessarily being cruel. They were just doing the thing that had always been done. And that was the issue of, like, tradition and theory outweighed evidence and, like, outcomes that were actually happening.
Well, it's not like the physicians could even measure the outcomes because they weren't even there.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is terrifying. There was no ethical requirement to, like, prove the benefit of what was going on.
Yeah.
So basically, if the patient died, the disease was too severe, they didn't take enough blood, it was the person or the disease's fault. Versus if the patient lived, like, they did a great job and they did exactly what they were supposed to do.
Right. It's that, what do you call it? Self-affirming bias.
Yes. Yep.
Where you're taking the positive outcomes and attributing them to mean that you're doing the correct thing and ignoring the negative outcomes.
Yeah. Which is terrifying. Even though there was moral certainty in some patients, like, we still weren't readjusting those treatments that you were talking about, which is really sad because that's like mounting deaths.
Yeah.
Yeah. We had no understanding of iatrogenic anemia or shock, meaning we were causing this anemia. We were causing this shock for the patients because we were taking out blood. And that's really terrifying how many patients we caused that on due to the bloodletting practices.
And that it was I think we talked about this in some other things too. It was the end-all be-all treatment.
Yeah.
So no matter what you had, you were getting bloodletting.
Yeah, which is terrifying.
Yeah, at the barber.
And then there is our lover boy, Pierre Louis, who finally decided, let's use some outcome-based medicine here. And he asked, like, does this actually help? What are the outcomes? And he stood up against theory and tradition and the things that had been done. And that's really important and really big in the ethics autopsy to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's hard to go against your peers and what's been done for so long.
I agree.
Even if you have evidence to back it up.
Yeah, because you have someone else who stood so strong on this for so long and is a great writer and is great at speeches and getting people to follow him. And then you're going to be the one. Yes. And then you're going to be the one to go against the grain.
Absolutely.
We kind of touched on this, but in modern bloodletting, we have very clear indications now and defined endpoints. We want the hemoglobin this low. We want the iron panel to be this low. And then we're only going to do it after that, 3 to 4 times a year if needed. Versus before, there was no clear endpoint. If it didn't work, we were going to try more.
Try again.
Yeah, which is terrifying. We have informed consent now. And then as we talked about, there's constant monitoring with these patients during the procedure, after the procedure, follow-up labs, all of the things.
Yeah.
Yeah. And medicinal leeches, now we have very targeted use for them and we're understanding the mechanism more. We've risk mitigated with prophylactic antibiotics, but it's also sad to me about we just dispose of them after they provide a service to us.
Boo.
Boo.
I guess you can't keep them because they have that person's blood.
I agree.
Still It's a little sad.
It is sad. Your favorite segment?
Cut it or keep it.
Gray area. I mean, we keep it. We're
Yeah.
using them both, so we obviously keep it.
Yeah. I definitely think we keep it. We definitely cut some of the historical practices.
Yes.
Don't do that.
But it is so nice that these weren't based in evil. They weren't based off of hurting people.
Right. They honestly thought that they were going to help.
Yeah.
It just got a little dark. The medieval times will do that to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a little uncomfortable, but it's a necessary one, I think.
I think so too. For both of them.
The practice, both, yeah, bloodletting and the leeches as well. Just don't be going to your barber for that.
No, please don't. Our listener question today to leave you with is...
Have we done one of these before?
I think so.
Well, we're going to ask you a question.
Yeah. Have we not?
I don't know.
Okay. What current medical practice do you think future generations will look back on and ask, how did we ever think that was okay?
Yeah. And then let us know because we'll make it an episode topic.
Yeah. I have ideas already about ones that we currently use, but I think we'll look back at ECT and question it once we genetically type people and understand medications better.
I don't know. I don't know. All I can think of is like ortho things right now.
Yeah.
But all of those seem pretty
needed. Yeah, you need functionality.
Maybe the micro drilling shenanigans that I got shouldn't be used anymore.
That's fair.
Okay, so one lesson that medicine had to learn the hard way was that the decline of bloodletting wasn't about better intentions, it was about better outcomes.
Yeah.
So that whole connection of the practice, not the patient.
Yes.
Right? And then physicians that stood up, like Pierre Louis, changed medicine by asking the question of, is this needed and does this actually help?
Yeah. And it makes me want to find something to stand up for and be like, is this actually needed?
Well, I think that is something you do in your everyday practice of is this scan needed? Is giving radiation to you?
Yeah. My big one is is this M1 hold needed?
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
I stand really big on this. I don't think people understand how severe M1 holds are. And how much weight they hold. And yes, if a patient is actively suicidal with a plan, if they're actively homicidal with a plan, they're truly gravely disabled, not able to take care of themselves if they walk out of the ER. I totally get it. But some M1s are written for really poor reasons, and it boils my blood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that kind of goes to the warning for modern healthcare. Let's keep questioning.
Yes.
Respectfully.
Yeah.
And just because something is normal for a treatment doesn't mean it's right or well studied.
I agree.
Sometimes it's just the loudest person in the room.
Yes.
And so it's okay to ask why we're doing something. It's okay to ask why all the time, not just for medicine, but for everything.
Yeah. And I think, as a student, you're told, don't be confident, learn. And I think we all need to carry that into our everyday practice. Don't be confident, be correctable. Let your patients teach you something. Let the medicine teach you something, Yeah. And then just a reminder, just because it's the way it's always been done does not mean it's the way it always should be done.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
All right. Well, on that note, you can support us. You can follow us on Instagram at _cadavers_lessons. Follow us on TikTok at the.cadavers.lessons. We're now on YouTube at just the Cadavers Lessons. Financially, you can support us at buymeacoffee.com/the_cadavers_lessons. You can listen on Spotify, Amazon, and Apple, and we are going to be working on getting us on a few more platforms, hopefully by the time this episode comes out. And then, of course, leave a review, comment, share our podcast, engage with us on social media. Make us noticeable.
If you have an idea for an episode or a case, go ahead and DM us your ideas and we'll pick them up and maybe share them here on the podcast. If you have a story of something that may have happened to you or a loved one in the past or now and you would like to share it on the podcast, let us know. We're hoping to collect enough stories to do some type of listener stories.
Yes.
We still can't come up with a catchy name.
We haven't put that much thought into it, if we're being honest.
I was just trying to, no, I'll spend 3 minutes thinking about one right here. No, we need to move on. But if you have a story, please share.
Yeah. We're going to continue the blood train next week, which was not our original plan until we started planning for this episode. And we are going to do blood transfusions. So there's some really cool stuff to learn there.
And you might be thinking, how is that so different than what we just talked about?
A lot.
Oh, it's different.
A lot. Yeah.
Oh, it's different.
All right. That's all for today. Class is dismissed.
Stay safe.
Stay curious.
And don't try this at home.
Unless you own a bone saw or a pocket knife. Bye, guys.
Bye.
This podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. We discuss the history of medicine, not your personal medical situation. Nothing you hear on this show should ever be taken as medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Some of the information discussed may be incorrect or become outdated over time. We do our best to stay current with medical knowledge, but medicine changes quickly. Additionally, because we do not work in every specific field we discuss, there may be times when we misspeak or misinterpret information. We're all human and we're doing our best for the podcast. Every medical case is unique, and your health decisions should always be made in consultation with your own qualified healthcare professional. If you have any questions or concerns about your health, please reach out to a licensed provider who can give you guidance based on your individual needs.